It's time for another episode of The Racing Report, and I'm so glad you've decided to join me today for this wonderful little half hour where we're going to talk all things motorsports. Because on today's show, we had NASCAR return to Rockingham for the first time since 2004, at least with the Xfinity Series. The Truck Series returned for the first time since 2013, and we've got a lot of news and notes to discuss regarding that weekend and looking ahead to Talladega coming up this weekend. Then we also had the Formula One Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, where we've got to talk about that because there was some controversy between Max Verstappen and eventual race winner Oscar Piastri. And then, also there was a Super Formula race that happened over the weekend that I'm going to talk about here later on in the show. So stay tuned for that. But hey, before we get into the news, be sure if you like this show to follow me on social media by looking up RPeters33. That's RPEETERS 33. You can find me there on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, however you want to do it. And then make sure you've always got the WTHR Plus app downloaded for your smart TV. You'll be able to find all of the latest and newest Racing Report episodes, including our brand new interview with Presley Sora, Cambridge City's Presley Sora. He's going to be running the ARCA race at Indianapolis Raceway Park coming up here in July. So be sure to check that out if you are a fan of Indiana drivers and want to know which ones are coming up through the ranks. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the Formula One news of the week, because we've got a big news story to discuss. General Motors has had its F1 engine approved for use beginning in the 2029 season. Now, the company will enter 2 cars in Formula One beginning next year, but they will compete using Ferrari engines for at least their first 3 seasons of competition. So some news there. We've got the Cadillac. That GM engine has been approved for Formula One use, but not until 2029. So that is when that Cadillac team will be entirely powered by its own individual factory and not relying on any customer parts, at least when it comes to the power unit. Now, more news in the world of Formula One to talk about today. FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem has nominated British Rally Championship race winner Malcolm Wilson as his preferred candidate to become the deputy FIA president after Robert Reid stepped down from the role earlier in this month. Now, here's why Robert Reid stepped down. He said he cited a standards breakdown as the reason for his departure. And what's interesting, and I'll read the quote here that came from Robert Reid. He said, quote, "Over time, I have witnessed a steady erosion of the principles we promised to uphold. Decisions are being made behind closed doors, bypassing the very structures and people the FIA exists to represent." So that is what Robert Reid said when he stepped down from his position as the deputy FIA president. So Ben Sulayem has nominated a new one. That vote will be held this upcoming summer. So I believe, what is this? Yes, in June, the FIA will meet in Macau to vote on who will become the next FIA deputy president. So interesting news to keep an eye on there, at least in the Formula One world. Now, also, let's stick with the Formula One world because ESPN had some good news when it comes to ratings this weekend. ESPN moved the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, which was originally supposed to be on ESPN2. Well, they moved it to Big ESPN, and it paid dividends because it saw an average viewership of 1.5 million viewers across the day, peaking at around 1.8 million. So some really good numbers to see out of Formula One. And again, it wasn't like it was at a bad time. It was about 1 o'clock Eastern time here in the States. So not a bad time to have a Formula One race, especially if it's on Big ESPN. You're going to get probably decent amount of viewers there, and it showed 1.5 million viewers. Now, that's, again, a big number for a cable TV channel in the year 2025, so definitely some positives that ESPN can take out of that, and they've been reporting year-over-year, race-over-race growth when it comes to viewership with Formula One, so maybe we could see ESPN stick around with the F1 rights unless Netflix takes it over and is willing to offer up more money. We'll see. I'm still curious to see how that goes, especially with this viewership. Now, another piece of Formula One news that is quite interesting here. In an interview with Motorsport.com, Red Bull senior advisor Helmut Marko said that he believes that Red Bull will have the speed to beat McLaren by quote-unquote Imola. So in 2 races' time. is he thinks that they're going to be competitive at the very least in Miami, but he believes them to be able to beat McLaren by Imola. So I will be very curious to see if this prediction from Helmut Marko plays out, especially given the fact that Yuki Tsunoda is still very much struggling behind the wheel of that Red Bull. Now, granted, lap 1 crash, what are you going to do about it? But, at least in Jeddah, what are you going to do about it? But still, I'm curious to see where Helmut Marko is. I need to see how Red Bull performs in Miami, if they can perform much better than they did maybe in Jeddah, even though I think that Jeddah circuit favored the RB21 just a little bit more. Even then, I think you need to see Tsunoda really starting to rack off a top 5 finish before I really start saying, yeah, Red Bull can maybe challenge McLaren. Because right now, I think it's probably McLaren's championship to lose, especially given the way Oscar Piastri's been driving the last couple of weeks. All right. Final piece of Formula One news here before we move on. Netflix will premiere a new docuseries focusing on the F1 Academy. The show, which is titled F1 The Academy, yes, very very creative, will premiere globally on May 28th and focus on the drivers throughout the 2024 season. So if you're unfamiliar with the F1 Academy, that is the all-women Formula One series that basically runs Formula 4 style cars, and its purpose is to help young women drivers get relationships with F1 teams and hopefully move their way up through the ranks and eventually get to Formula One. Again, it's not supposed to be a Formula One series in and of itself. It's not F2, it's not F3, it's a Formula 4 car. So you're not exactly expecting much, but this does allow drivers that wouldn't normally maybe have that opportunity to go out there and show what they can do and put themselves out in front of prospective team owners. This allows them to have that opportunity and they can compete. But again, a lot of people have asked questions like, do we want segregation in motorsports? And, I'm always the proponent that no, we don't need segregation in motorsports. The best part about motorsports is the fact that men and women compete on an equal playing field every week. I prefer that, but, the F1 Academy serves to, at the very least, exists to serve a specific purpose, and that is what it is. All right. Let's move on here into the IndyCar world, because we got a lot of IndyCar news to discuss, because IndyCar has clarified its Indianapolis 500 driver replacement rules following the logistical challenges that Kyle Larson faced last year during his double attempt. So here's what some of those rule clarifications are going to be. So first of all, a replacement driver will only be considered if the primary driver is also participating in another marquee event with the driver's principal racing series on Indy 500 race day. So what that means is it's kind of got language in there like, okay, if you're running another race in addition to the Indy 500, this is the only way we're going to play out these rules. I mean, replacement drivers for other situations are going to be evaluated differently, but this is how these rules are going to be interpreted. So the IndyCar approved veteran replacement driver, so the driver that this team goes out and gets as a potential replacement driver in the event that their primary driver is unable to race, what they're going to have to do is make sure that that replacement driver is eligible for and passes a refresher program during Indy 500 practice. So this week, they've got an Indy 500 open test where different drivers like Kyle Larson are out there completing rookie orientation and their refresher test. So Larson is out there completing his refresher test. But the replacement driver will not be able to do that in the open test and will have to be done during official Indy 500 practice. So look for possibly Tony Kanaan making some practice laps in that refresher test coming up here in the month of May. Now, additionally, tires for the refresher test, they're not going to give you additional tires. So you're still going to have the same allotted sets of tires that you would have normally for the month of May, and you're not going to get another set of tires so that your replacement driver can run that refresher test. You're going to have to allot those tires separately and make do with however many tire sets you have left by the time that refresher test rolls around. So now, after the driver completes their refresher program, they will not be allowed any additional laps until race day. So what that means is, let's say hypothetically speaking, Kyle Larson is busy qualifying and racing at the All-Star race, right? and there's, say, like a rain delay or something during qualifying, and Larson has to get to the All-Star race. Well, Tony Kanaan can't go out there and run and qualify the car. It's going to have to be Kyle Larson. He's going to have to go out there and run the car. Additionally, Tony Kanaan cannot go out there and shake down the car before, say, qualifying or before another practice session. So it all has to be done with Kyle Larson. Otherwise, this is what's going to happen. Now, in the event that, let's say, the Indy 500 gets delayed heavily and Kyle Larson has to fly to Charlotte and the whole thing is for naught, Tony Kanaan will obviously be allowed to start in that car, but he'll have to go to the back. They'll forfeit their qualifying procedure, which is pretty much what's happened anytime that this situation has arises. You just go to the back, and then that kind of seems fair for everybody. But like I said, the primary driver can return to the cockpit only provided the replacement driver has not competed in a session other than the refresher test. So what that means is if Tony Kanaan competes or qualifies the car or competes or tries to practice the car or shakes down the car during carb day or whatever, Kyle Larson can't get back in there. It's going to have to be Tony Kanaan. He's going to have to start the race. So these are the new rules when it comes down to IndyCar replacement drivers with drivers attempting the double in this case. So I mainly use the example of what would happen now between Tony Kanaan, who is the announced replacement driver for Kyle Larson in the event that he cannot compete in the Indy 500 or cannot compete in the entire Indy 500. These are the procedures that Aaron McLaren will have to follow. Now, that is the IndyCar news for this week. Again, mostly Indy 500 stuff. We're gearing up for the month of May. We've got the cars on track for the open test. We're running the hybrids now. That's going to be very interesting to see how those hybrids do. But speaking of a series that's had hybrids for a while, that's IMSA. As we talk about IMSA news, this is some pretty big bombshell news because BMW is apparently evaluating a possible team switch in the GTP class for 2026. Now, according to Racer, because Rahal Letterman Lanigan could be replaced with another team. So you could see a BMW program and Rahal Letterman Lanigan, that program split. But a final decision is expected by this summer. So we will know whether or not BMW and RLL are going to either continue or discontinue their current partnership in the IMSA GTP class. Now, a few possible names have been rumored, like even Chip Ganassi Racing, but nothing's really been confirmed. We don't know for sure what teams might be talking to BMW, what teams BMW might be talking about. All we do know is that RLL, Rahal Letterman Lanigan, are still in negotiations with BMW to potentially continue that partnership beyond this year. So we will have to monitor that to see what happens. At least could have some pretty big shakeups in the GTP class. Now, let's move on into the supercars news before we take a break, because this is fairly important to, at the very least, touch on real quick. Ahead of their new deal as GM Supercars homologation team, Team 18 is expanding and GM is establishing its own racing department that will be headed by current Triple Eight Racing Technical Chief Jeremy Moore beginning next season. So Jeremy Moore is currently with Triple Eight Racing and he cannot go work for Team 18 and start working on that homologation effort until the end of this season. So obviously it was in the Speed Cafe article where they talked about this, that, you know, Anton De Pasquale, who drives for Team 18, really wants to start working with Jeremy Moore, but they can't. Obviously, they can't even talk to him until that contract is up. But some big changes coming to Team 18 in supercars as Triple Eight Racing will move on and leave the Chevrolet, the GM camp for Ford beginning next year. So we're going to take a quick break now after that supercars news, and when we come back, we're going to dive into some of the NASCAR news that you might have missed over the past week, because it was a Cup Series off weekend, but the Xfinity and Truck Series and the ARCA E Series were in action at Rockingham. So we'll talk about that news coming up. So don't go anywhere. You're watching The Racing Report. And we're back, and in the Racing Report, my name is Rob Peeters. Let's talk about NASCAR, because like I said before we cut to commercial, NASCAR was back this weekend with the Xfinity Truck Series and the ARCA E Series in Rockingham. But the news that has happened since then is pretty substantial. The big piece of news that's came out on Wednesday: Spire Motorsports and Rodney Childers have effectively parted ways, and Justin Haley will have a new crew chief beginning this weekend at Talladega. So some big shakeups there. It's just 9 races into the NASCAR Cup Series season, and already Rodney Childers and Spire Motorsports have gone Splitsville. Now it seems like, at least according to the press release and the media statement that was given by Spire Motorsports, that this might have been a decision by Spire themselves, maybe possibly with some sort of culture differences, maybe. I don't know. The statement was quite vague. Rodney Childers simply just said he's going to take some time off in his own personal statement, which, again, you can read both of these statements on their Twitter accounts right now. If you go there, or X accounts, excuse me. If you go there right now, you can read those statements in full. But it's really interesting because this was such a highly touted signing by Spire Motorsports to get Rodney Childers to come in here and work with Justin Haley. And it really seemed like that team was starting to turn around. Obviously, maybe it wasn't having the results that maybe they would have wanted. But again, it is still tough to compete in the Cup Series at a high level. But they were getting there. You know, they were definitely getting there with Justin Haley. So I'm curious to see what the team decides to do from here, especially in regards to that number 7 and who's going to be crew chiefing it. At least as of the recording of this episode, I don't know who's going to be crew chiefing it. Probably by the time you're watching it, that decision has already been made. We'll have to see. We'll revisit that coming up here probably next week. Now, more NASCAR news. This was pretty big. Kurt Busch and Randy LaJoie are the new nominees for the NASCAR Hall of Fame. So they will be eligible for voting. Again, only three different drivers get into the Hall of Fame. 2 from the modern era and 1 from the Pioneer class. I wish that they would put in more people, but it is what it is. But hey, congratulations to Kurt Busch and Randy LaJoie on their nominations. Definitely 2 guys that for sure deserve that nomination. All right, next piece of news. According to Jordan Bianchi of The Athletic, Homestead Miami is indeed expected to host the 2026 championship weekend before a rotating schedule is introduced for the championship race. So essentially what this says, this has not been officially confirmed by NASCAR, but this is being reported by a reputable source in Jordan Bianchi of The Athletic. So according to those sources, Homestead Miami is going to have the 2026 championship race again. So this year, Phoenix will be the last year that they have the championship race, at least for the foreseeable future. But that's not the last time that they'll have the championship race, because when NASCAR decides to go to this rotating format, they're going to rotate out the championship race every year. So we might be going to Homestead in 2026, but we also might go to a completely different track in 2027. It's possible we go back to Phoenix maybe in 2028, but it's looking likely that maybe we go to Vegas in 2027 as your championship race, and then maybe back to Phoenix. Again, none of that is confirmed. None of that has been set in stone. We don't know what tracks are going to host the future championship races outside of Homestead in next year. That is all we know, but that is the format that NASCAR is moving to, so that championship race is continually different. Maybe that will create for a little bit more fair of a championship 4 outcome. I don't know. I think it's too early to say, and it really all comes down to what NASCAR does, if anything, with the playoff system going forward. Because remember, at the beginning of this year, we were talking about on this show how NASCAR was actually evaluating changes to the playoff system, and one of those changes might even be making the championship 4, breaking that down into 3 different rounds. So 3 races, kind of like how Supercars is doing it this year with their playoff format, I guess. That could be a possibility, and if that is the case, I will be very curious to see how the rotating schedule moves into that. Now, Phoenix will continue to host 2 dates even when it has the championship race. So Phoenix in the spring will stick around, but it might, it either will have the finale race or it will host another race before, it's sometime in October or November, depending on when that falls. All right. Next piece of news here, and this is very important because we've got the NASCAR All-Star Race coming up here in a couple of weeks, and we now know the format for the All-Star Race at North Wilkesboro. Not only that, we also found out that you're going to get 2 Cars Tour races in addition to the Truck Series race and the Heat races and the Open and the actual All-Star Race. So let's break down what the All-Star Race is going to look like this year. It's going to feature 2 60-lap Heat races. After qualifying, that's going to set the field for the 100-lap All-Star Open, and then you'll have a 250-lap main event up from the 200 laps from last year. Now, there will also be a manufacturer showdown. Well, they'll take the 3 manufacturers, 1 driver, and it'll be one big event where all these manufacturers get to showcase their things. You'll have the pit stop competition coming back as well. That's kind of cool. But something interesting to know about the actual main event is that you'll have now a promoter's caution that can be thrown before lap 200 of the main event. Now, it has not been used. If it has not been used, so let's say hypothetically we get to about lap 200 and the promoter's caution has not fallen yet, it will no longer be in play, but there will be a caution on or near lap 100. So, to just fully clarify, if we have not thrown the promoter's caution by that lap 200, or excuse me, lap 220 mark, then we won't use it at all. It'll have to be thrown before lap 200, and if there's a natural yellow that comes out before or around that lap 200 mark, then we won't use the promoter's caution at all. Now, and like I said, there'll be a competition caution on lap 11, so you're kind of breaking it into stages, but you're also kind of not. Meanwhile, in terms of eligibility, the race winners, Cup Series race winners from 2024 and 2025 will be eligible, as well as former All-Star race winners who are running full-time and former Cup champions running full-time. So Kyle Busch is still eligible, even though he hasn't won a race in either 2024 or 2025. Kyle Busch is still eligible for the main All-Star race, being a 2-time Cup Series champion, still running full-time. That's just an example, but now you get the idea of what's going on. Now, final piece of NASCAR news before we take our final break of the show. Jake Garcia is going to make his Xfinity Series debut this weekend at Talladega, driving for RSS Racing in the number 29 Ford Mustang. Now, it's time for our final break of the show. When we come back, we're going to break down the Formula One Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, break down the NASCAR weekend in Rockingham, and then get you ready for all the races that are coming up, not just this weekend, but also next weekend. So, don't go anywhere. You are watching The Racing Report. And we're back on The Racing Report. It's time to get you wrapped up for Formula One because we got another week off before Formula One comes back. So let's recap the Formula One Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Oscar Piastri has won his 3rd race of the Formula One season, and he now leads his teammate Lando Norris in the championship standings by 10 points. So it's still close, and he leads Verstappen by, I think, 11 or 12 points. So the title is still there, even though Piastri has already won 2 races. Now, Verstappen maybe could have won this race, and here's where I have this big thing about the race as a whole in Jeddah, was on lap 1, Verstappen went wide, or Verstappen and Piastri went side by side into turn 1, and Verstappen, in order to avoid a wreck, Verstappen went off the track, cut the chicane a little bit in that first turn, and just sped off. Now, it just so happened that at the same time, Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda crashed, bringing out a safety car. Now, what I'm so curious about is why Max Verstappen did not give that position back before he picked up the safety car. Because if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, he was given a 5-second penalty for that. So he had to serve that penalty on his first pit stop, whereas he could have just given the position back and then just passed Piastri again in turn 1. Now, I don't know if it's Verstappen thought, I can't give up this track position regardless, and he just decided, I'll hot lap and try and get, an additional 5-second gap on Piastri. Well, that's just going to be hard when your car objectively is not as fast as the McLaren. It's going to be hard to hot lap and get, a 22 seconds lost on pit road to then jump that up and try and get a 27-second lead. That's just an insanely tall task to get. I think that Verstappen would have been way better off just letting Piastri by picking up the safety car and then trying to get him again on the restart. He didn't feel that way. Red Bull didn't feel that way. Red Bull is saying that he had the corner. I guess Verstappen is just convinced that he had the corner, even though I think most people watching that race will say, no, buddy, you didn't have the corner and you had to cut the chicane in order to make the pass. So ergo, it wasn't a clean pass. You should have given the spot back and then you would have still had a chance to win the race. That didn't happen, is what it is. But outside of that, you look at Verstappen's teammate and where Red Bull is in the Constructors' Championship right now. Yuki Tsunoda had a horrible luck. I mean, I didn't think that car was all that damaged. Obviously, Gasly's car was way worse than Tsunoda's, but Tsunoda's rear wing. I mean, they came in, they retired the car, and I was like, are you kidding me? So now you know how many points he's got. You know how many points Tsunoda's got now. He's 16th in Formula One Championship right now with just 5 points scored, and Max Verstappen is like 87, and that's the difference. I mean, that's really the difference between the two drivers, and that's why Helmut Marko's comments earlier in the show have me kind of wondering. I'll believe it when Yuki starts racking off more top 10 finishes, Helmut. That's for sure. But hey, Williams scoring double points for the first time in quite some time. Sainz was P8 and Albon was P9, so good news there for Williams. Now let's move on into some NASCAR news because I think it's very timely that we discuss this. NASCAR was in Rockingham, like I said. The Truck Series returned on Friday afternoon for the first time since 2013, and it was a fuel mileage race. It was a thrilling fuel mileage race where a caution came out right on the edge of that pit window, and it created for some very intense last lap drama. Tyler Ankrum snapped a 130 race winless streak with that victory on Friday. Huge momentum there for him. He also won $50,000 in the Triple Truck Challenge. And in general, it was just surprising to see all the drivers just start dropping like flies. You don't see a lot of fuel mileage races, especially now with how overtime works and how the stages are broken up. You just don't see that very often. You saw that both in the Truck Series and in the Xfinity Series race. Now, as we talk about the Xfinity Series race, it was just as fun of a race as the Truck Series, at least I thought. But the end was a little bit controversial because Jesse Love crossed the finish line first, but was disqualified in post-race tech inspection, ergo giving the win to Sammy Smith. RCR appealed this decision, and it was denied on Wednesday. So Sammy Smith is going to keep that win. Jesse Love gets kicked back to the dead last finish after being disqualified. But there was some other things to do. I know I talked about it last week. I was so excited to see Casey Kane come back to NASCAR. He finished 14th after a little bit of an accident with Catherine Legg and William Sawalich, where William Sawalich just ran into the back of Catherine Legg. I don't know what he was doing there, and a lot of people, unfortunately, were criticizing Catherine Legg, and at least, on my opinion, every time I watched that replay, Catherine held her line. I mean, the car that was ahead of Sawalich was able to pass her no problem on the bottom. I don't know why Sawalich just couldn't get low enough and just ran into her rear bumper. I'm not sure what he was thinking there, but it took out Casey Kane in the process, and who was having a very, very promising race. But he still rallied back to finish 14th, finished 15th, but again, 14th after the Jesse Love disqualification. So not bad. And also what was really, I think, promising was how good he looked after the race. He didn't look exhausted like he did during the last couple of races in 2018. He didn't look super exhausted. It looked like something that he had been doing for quite some time. So it was very positive to see Casey out there in that regard. So, and then again, obviously the big question is, should the Cup Series return to Rockingham? I don't know. I think that's too far up in the air right now. I think it might be a little bit too early to start talking about that, but someone on Twitter did put it perfectly in that Rockingham deserves the Cup Series, but the Cup Series doesn't deserve Rockingham, maybe until we get some more horsepower under those hoods. Anyway, now let's discuss real quick Super Formula in Motegi. Tadasuke Makino was winner in race 1. That was, again, some very fun pit strategy going on, a lot of action going on in that race. They were in the Motegi, the twin ring Motegi on that road course. And then Kakunoshin Ota won race 2. Now, the points panel in Super Formula is very tight now. It is a 1-point gap between Ota and Makano after 4 races. So if you're not watching Super Formula yet, I highly recommend you tune in for their next race in Indianapolis, and I'll tell you when that is coming up here in a little bit. But now let's preview some of the races that are coming up this weekend. NASCAR and Cup and Xfinity are coming to Talladega, so that's always going to be a big, exciting race. Are we going to see the big one? What kind of racing are we going to get? Are we going to see a lot of fuel saving amongst the pack, at least in the Cup Series? Maybe, probably. I think at this point, most super speedway races are quite predictable. So I think most of us watching are pretty much aware of what's probably going to go down in that race. But then we've got Formula One taking a week off. They're going to come back in Miami. So it's going to be another race stateside. It's going to be at a decent time for those of you and me watching here in the United States. They're going to come back with that race on May 4th. IndyCar also will return May 4th at Barber Motorsports Park before they kick off the month of May with the IndyCar Grand Prix later on. A week after that. Then IMSA is coming back also May 9th through the 11th. They're going to Laguna Seca for their next race before they pick up again with the IndyCar Series in Detroit in June. Supercars is going to Tasmania also May 8th through the 11th. So Supercars has another race coming up as well. Formula E also has a race coming up in 2 weeks' time. They're going to Monaco for a doubleheader there. If you haven't watched a Formula E race at Monaco, I highly recommend it. And the reason why is because if you think Formula One races at Monaco aren't all that fun, just watch what happens when you put 22 race cars that are a lot smaller than a Formula One car around Monaco and have them energy saved. You'll start to see pack racing and more passing than you've ever seen at a standard Monaco race. So highly recommend checking that race out if you get a chance. And then finally, like I said, Super Formula with a 1 point gap between first and second in the championship standings. They're back in Autopolis May 17th and 18th. So get ready for that. If you haven't figured out how to watch Super Formula yet, I highly recommend doing that because you won't want to miss some of those races. They're very, very entertaining. So that is it for this week's episode of The Racing Report. I really, really appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, we really appreciate all the support that we get. Remember, if you like this show, be sure to follow me on social media at rpeters33. Be sure to subscribe to WTHR on YouTube, and make sure you got that WTHR Plus app downloaded on your smart TV, your Amazon Fire, Roku, or Apple TV device so that you can get brand new episodes of The Racing Report. And be sure to check out our interview with Cambridge City's own Presley Sora. That is on demand and airing on WTHR Plus. So, for WTHR Plus, I'm Rob Peeters, and thank you guys for watching another episode of The Racing Report. We'll see you next week.